Lead archaeologist Zinare stood motionless before the ancient structure, her crystalline sensory appendages vibrating with excitement. After 3 cycles of meticulous excavation on this seemingly unremarkable planet in the Orion Arm, her team had finally uncovered something extraordinary. The structure before them defied everything they thought they knew about technological progression. Elder scientist Kemu must see this immediately, she transmitted to her research partner, Valenai, whose bioluminescent patterns flickered in agreement. The structure wasn't particularly impressive by Galactic Federation standards, a simple quantum communications relay, the kind commonly used for interplanetary communications. What made it remarkable was its age. According to their most advanced dating methods, this relay was barely 300 years old. That was impossible. The Arxians, like most species in the Federation, had taken nearly 50,000 years to develop quantum communication after achieving spaceflight. Every known species followed similar development curves. It was practically a universal constant. Yet here was evidence that someone had done it in a fraction of the time. The readings must be wrong, Valenai suggested, his patterns displaying skepticism. Perhaps the local radiation has corrupted the temporal signatures. Zinare's sensory crystals pulsed with disagreement. We've verified the readings 7 times using different methods. This facility was built approximately 276 years ago, and there's more. She gestured toward the facility's entrance with one of her upper appendages. The construction materials are primitive by our standards. Whoever built this was working with significantly less advanced technology than we'd expect for quantum communication development. The implications were staggering. Either an unknown advanced species had deliberately built a facility using primitive materials, which made no logical sense, or someone had achieved in centuries what took others millennia. Within hours, their small archaeological site had become a hive of activity. The Federation's top scientists and military advisors arrived through quantum gates, their various forms of locomotion leaving tracks in the red soil as they hurried to examine the discovery. Elder scientist Kemu, a respected member of the Science Council, personally led the investigation. His ancient form, supported by a gravity manipulation field, hovered before the facility's main console. Most fascinating, he hummed, the sound resonating through his crystalline body. The engineering is elegant in its simplicity. Whoever built this solved quantum entanglement problems in ways we never considered. They used basic materials but applied principles that wouldn't be discovered by our civilization for another 20,000 years after reaching this technological level. But who were they? Zinare asked, her curiosity overwhelming proper protocol. We found no biological traces, no cultural artifacts beyond the technology itself. Kemu's response was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the orbital research vessel. Elder scientist, we're detecting an approaching ship. It appears to be using primitive chemical propulsion, but it's achieving speeds that should be impossible with such technology. The assembled scientists froze, their various sensory organs all focused skyward. First contact protocols were immediately enacted, and the Federation's most sophisticated first contact specialists were summoned. The approaching vessel was unlike anything in the Federation database. It was ungainly, clearly built for function rather than form, with massive engines that seemed grossly oversized for its frame. By all known physics, it shouldn't have been able to achieve the speeds it was traveling at, yet there it was, decelerating with remarkable precision. As the vessel approached, they received a transmission in simple electromagnetic waves, another surprise, as most species had abandoned such primitive communication methods long before achieving deep space travel. The message was simple: greetings from Earth. We noticed your activity at our old relay station. Mind if we drop by to chat? The casual nature of the message sent ripples of shock through the assembled scientists. The Federation's first contact specialists scrambled to formulate a response that wouldn't reveal their astonishment. When the ship landed, the final shock came. From it emerged beings that, according to all evolutionary models, should have been impossible. They walked on 2 legs, had no protective exoskeleton, and possessed remarkably few sensory organs. They were, by all apparent measures, primitive beings. Yet they had built that quantum relay. They had achieved faster-than-light travel using chemical propulsion. They had done the impossible, and they had done it in a mere fraction of the time it took other species. "Welcome to Echo Base Alpha," one of the beings said, showing its teeth in what their xenobiologists would later learn was a sign of friendliness rather than aggression. "We haven't used this facility in about 100 years, but we kept it in the database. Funny thing, we were actually planning to come back and upgrade it next month. The old quantum tech is a bit outdated by our standards now." Xenaray's sensory crystals nearly shattered from the implications. Outdated? They considered this technology, which had taken other species tens of thousands of years to perfect, outdated after just a few centuries? As the humans, as they called themselves, began to explain their history and technological development, the Federation scientists realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. They weren't just making first contact with a new species, they were encountering a civilization that had somehow compressed tens of thousands of years of development into mere centuries. The question that burned in every scientist's mind was simple: how? How had these beings achieved so much in so little time? And more importantly, what did their existence mean for the fundamental understanding of technological progression in the galaxy? Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a discovery that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Federation's understanding of civilization itself. The Federation's Grand Archives, a vast crystalline structure orbiting a stable neutron star, had never been so busy. Streams of data flowed through its quantum networks as researchers from 1,000 worlds analyzed every scrap of information about the species called humans. Elder scientist Camus floated in the central chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing human technological progression. The data made his crystalline form vibrate with disbelief. "It simply cannot be," he muttered to himself, manipulating the timeline with gentle waves of his appendages. From primitive combustion engines to quantum physics in less than 3 centuries, from basic space flight to FTL travel in under 100 years. Xenaray entered the chamber, her sensory crystals still recalibrating from her latest meeting with the human delegation. "Elder, the humans have provided more historical records. They're rather proud of their accomplishments." "Proud?" Camus' form flickered with amusement. "They've broken every known model of technological progression." Pride seems an inadequate response. The holographic displays shifted to show Earth's history. Unlike the carefully planned, methodical advancement of Federation species, human progress looked like chaos. They developed technologies in the wrong order, skipped crucial developmental stages, and somehow achieved results that shouldn't have been possible with their level of understanding. "Look at this," Xenaray pointed to a particular data stream. "They developed nuclear power before fully understanding atomic structure. They achieved powered flight before mastering basic automotive transportation. They reached their moon using computing systems less powerful than our personal communicators. It's as if they don't know they're doing everything wrong," Camus observed. "Or perhaps, we're the ones who have been doing it wrong all along." The revelation sent ripples through his crystalline form. The Federation had always assumed there was a natural, logical progression to technological advancement. Every known species had followed similar patterns, until now. Their discussion was interrupted by an urgent alert. A human diplomatic vessel had just arrived at the archives, requesting permission to dock. The ship itself was another impossibility, a hybrid of technologies that should have been incompatible, yet somehow worked together in perfect harmony. Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped out of the vessel, accompanied by Dr. James Morrison, Earth's leading expert in comparative xenotechnology. They moved through the archives with an ease that belied their species' youth, showing no signs of being impressed by technology that had taken other races millennia to develop. "We've been reviewing your development models," Dr. Morrison began, pulling up his own holographic display using a device that seemed impossibly compact. "Fascinating stuff, but I think we see the fundamental flaw in your assumptions." Camus' sensory crystals vibrated with attention. "Flaw? You assume technology must develop in a linear, logical progression," Ambassador Chin explained. "But humans, we tend to stumble into discoveries. We make mistakes. We try things that shouldn't work. Sometimes, those mistakes lead to breakthroughs." Dr. Morrison nodded, displaying images of human history. Take the Wright brothers. By your models, they shouldn't have achieved powered flight for another 50 years. But they didn't know that. They just tried, failed, tried again. But the risks. Zinneray's patterns displayed concern. The potential for catastrophic failure. Oh, we had those too, Ambassador Chen laughed. Lots of them. But we learned from each failure. We adapted. We never assumed something was impossible just because it hadn't been done before. The implications staggered the Federation scientists. Their careful, methodical approach to advancement had seemed the only logical path. But these humans had essentially thrown themselves at the boundaries of physics, failing repeatedly but learning at an unprecedented rate. There's something else, Dr. Morrison added, his expression turning serious. We've been analyzing your evolutionary data. According to your records, most spacefaring species take around 100,000 years to advance from basic tool use to interstellar travel. Do you know how long it took us? Camus accessed the relevant data. Your records indicate approximately 10,000 years from first tools to present day. Exactly, Ambassador Chen said. We're not just young in terms of our technology. We're young as a species. Which raises an interesting question. What made us different? Why did we develop so fast? The question hung in the air like a temporal distortion. The humans seemed eager to collaborate, to share knowledge, but there was something in their manner that suggested they already had theories about their unique development. As if reading their thoughts, Dr. Morrison smiled. We have some ideas about that. But first, we need to discuss something we found in our ancient genetic records. Something that might explain why humanity seems to be, well, operating on a different timeline than the rest of the galaxy. The humans' casual confidence was unsettling. Here they were, surrounded by the accumulated knowledge of 1,000,000 years of Federation science, yet they spoke as equals, no, as teachers preparing to explain something to students. Camus and Zinneray exchanged patterns of uncertainty. They were about to learn something that would change their understanding not just of humanity, but of life itself. The question was, were they ready for what these young beings had discovered? The presentation chamber in the Grand Archives had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Representatives from every major Federation species crowded the crystalline amphitheater, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of evolutionary diversity. At the center stage, Dr. James Morrison stood before a holographic display of the human genome, his presence somehow commanding despite being physically smaller than most of his audience. What we're about to share with you, he began, will challenge everything you think you know about species development. Ambassador Chen, if you would. Sarah Chen stepped forward, activating a series of genetic markers in the display. During our early genetics research, we discovered something unusual in human DNA. Patterns that didn't match any known natural evolutionary process. At first, we thought it was just an anomaly. The holographic display zoomed in on specific genetic sequences, highlighting them in pulsing red. Camus' crystalline form vibrated with recognition. Those patterns, they're similar to engineered genetic modifications we've seen in controlled evolution experiments. Exactly, Dr. Morrison nodded. But these modifications are far more sophisticated than anything we, or you, have ever achieved. They're seamlessly integrated into our genome, as if they were always meant to be there. A murmur ran through the assembled scientists, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of surprise and disbelief. Are you suggesting, Zinneray's patterns flickered rapidly, that humans were engineered? Not exactly, Ambassador Chen replied. We think we were, accelerated. Our genetic analysis suggests that somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago, something or someone introduced subtle changes to our ancestors' DNA. Changes that dramatically enhanced our capacity for abstract thinking, pattern recognition, and, most importantly, technological innovation. The holographic display shifted to show human brain development over time. The progression was unlike anything seen in other species, sudden leaps in complexity, rapid development of new neural pathways, and unprecedented plasticity. We call it the Prometheus Code, Dr. Morrison continued. These genetic modifications didn't give us specific knowledge or technology. Instead, They gave us something far more valuable, an enhanced ability to learn, adapt, and innovate. We don't just learn from our mistakes. We're driven to make them, to push boundaries, to question everything. Elder scientist Camus moved forward, his ancient form trembling with excitement. This explains the temporal anomaly in your development. You were designed to advance quickly. But by whom? The question came from a Ventralian scientist, their gas cloud form swirling with curiosity. Who had the capability to perform such precise genetic engineering so long ago? Ambassador Chen's expression turned serious. That's where things get really interesting. The Prometheus code contains embedded markers, a signature, if you will. We've spent years trying to decode it, and recently we succeeded. The holographic display changed again, showing a complex series of molecular patterns. To the Federation scientists, they looked like random fluctuations, but Dr. Morrison's next words froze every being in the chamber. These patterns match the quantum signature of artifacts we've discovered in deep space, artifacts that predate the formation of the Milky Way itself. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the natural background resonance of crystalline beings seemed to stop. We believe, Ambassador Chen continued into the silence, that whoever modified our ancestors was looking for something. They seeded multiple species across the galaxy with different traits, different approaches to development. Some, like your civilizations, were designed for stability and careful progress. Others, like humanity, were designed for rapid advancement and innovation. An experiment? Zinaray's patterns showed horror at the implication. More like a safeguard, Dr. Morrison corrected. We found evidence that these beings, we call them the progenitors, were facing some kind of crisis. They needed to ensure that at least some of their seeded civilizations would advance quickly enough to. He paused, looking uncertain for the first time. To what? Camus pressed. Ambassador Chen took a deep breath. To be ready when they return. According to our calculations and the temporal markers in the Prometheus code, that return is due to happen within the next 50 years. The amphitheater erupted in a chaos of communication. Some beings called for immediate military preparation, others for scientific investigation, and still others for attempts to suppress this dangerous knowledge. But through it all, the humans remained calm, almost eerily so. We're not sharing this to cause panic, Ambassador Chen's voice cut through the chaos. We're sharing it because we need each other. Your species have stability, wisdom, and countless millennia of accumulated knowledge. We have innovation, adaptability, and a drive to solve impossible problems. Together, we might have a chance to be ready for whatever the progenitors intended. As the implications sank in, a new understanding began to spread through the chamber. The humans weren't just another young species that had developed too quickly. They were purpose-built problem solvers, designed to tackle challenges that even their creators couldn't foresee. The question was, what kind of challenge required such desperate measures? And would the combined knowledge of the Federation and humanity's innovative drive be enough to face it? The Federation Council chamber on Proxima Centauri 3 buzzed with an energy unlike anything in its 1,000-year history. The massive amphitheater, designed to accommodate representatives of every known spacefaring species, was filled to capacity. At its center, a human stood before the council, not as a petitioner, but as an equal. Dr. Elena Santos, Earth's leading expert in quantum physics, adjusted the collar of her environment suit. Even after months of diplomatic relations, some species still found human biology disconcerting. Their lack of exoskeletons, their constant need for temperature regulation, their peculiar habit of verbal communication. The Prometheus Initiative, she began, her voice clear through the universal translators, represents humanity's response to the progenitor timeline. We propose a radical reorganization of how we approach technological development. The chamber's holoprojectors activated, displaying a complex network of interconnected research facilities spanning multiple star systems. Each node represented a different species' contribution to what would be the largest collaborative project in galactic history. High Counselor Vertox, their crystalline form glowing with skepticism, spoke first. You propose to completely restructure how we conduct research? The Federation's methodical approach has served us for millennia. With respect, High Counselor, Elena responded, "We no longer have millennia. The progenitors will return in 50 years, and we don't know why. What we do know is that they engineered humanity to think differently, to innovate rapidly. Perhaps it's time to embrace that capacity." Ambassador Chen stepped forward, joining Elena at the center. "We're not suggesting abandoning your methods entirely. Rather, we propose a synthesis. Your stability and wisdom, combined with our innovation and willingness to take calculated risks." The holographic display shifted, showing historical data from Human Federation collaborations over the past months. The results were undeniable. Research teams that combined human intuitive leaps with Federation methodical analysis had achieved breakthroughs that would have taken decades using traditional approaches. "Look at what we've already accomplished together," Elena continued. "The quantum field stabilizer developed by the Human Arxean team. The breakthrough in dark matter manipulation from the Human Ventralian collaboration. These aren't just incremental improvements, they're revolutionary advances." A hive mind representative pulsed with concern, their collective consciousness projecting doubt. "The risk factors in human methodologies are unprecedented. The potential for catastrophic failure is precisely why we need your expertise," Ambassador Chen interrupted smoothly. "Humans excel at making intuitive leaps, at seeing connections others miss. But we also have a tendency to, well, blow things up occasionally. Your species' natural caution and analytical abilities can help prevent disasters while still allowing for rapid progress." Dr. Morrison, who had been quietly observing from the sidelines, stepped forward. "We've also discovered something interesting about the Prometheus Code. It seems to resonate with certain Federation technologies in unexpected ways. We believe the progenitors may have engineered this compatibility intentionally." The holographic display updated again, showing the strange quantum resonance patterns between human neural activity and Federation quantum computers. The implications were staggering. Humans weren't just designed to think differently, they were designed to interface with advanced technology in ways other species couldn't. "This isn't about humans taking over or replacing existing methods," Elena emphasized. "It's about creating something new together. A hybrid approach that takes advantage of all our strengths." The chamber erupted in discussion, thousands of beings communicating in their native forms. But underneath the chaos, there was a growing sense of excitement. For the first time in recorded history, the Federation was facing a challenge that required them to fundamentally change how they approached progress itself. High Counselor Vertox raised all 4 appendages for silence. "The Council recognizes the logic in your proposal, Dr. Santos. But we must address the elephant in the room, as your species would say. What do you believe the progenitors want from us?" Elena exchanged glances with her fellow humans before responding. "We have a theory. The Prometheus Code contains fragments of what we believe to be memories, not specific information, but feelings, impressions. They speak of a threat, something the progenitors couldn't defeat even with their advanced technology." The chamber grew still. "We think," Ambassador Chen continued, "they seeded the galaxy with different approaches to problem-solving, the Federation's methodical stability, humanity's rapid innovation, and who knows how many other variations, hoping that together we might find solutions they couldn't see." "And you believe this innovation protocol will prepare us for their return?" Vertox's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. "No," Elena said firmly. "We believe it will prepare us for what comes after their return. The progenitors aren't coming back to check on their experiment. They're coming back because they need our help." As the implications of her words sank in, the chamber erupted again. But this time, the chaos had a different flavor. Species that had never worked together began forming impromptu discussion groups. Traditional rivals found themselves sharing ideas. The entire Federation was beginning to think in new ways, exactly as the progenitors had intended. In the midst of it all, Dr. Morrison turned to Zinare, who had been quietly observing from nearby. "You know what the truly remarkable thing is? Even knowing we were engineered for this purpose, humans still can't help pushing boundaries. It's not just genetic programming, it's who we've chosen to be." Zinare's patterns showed understanding. "Perhaps that was the greatest gift the progenitors gave you, not the capacity for rapid advancement, but the freedom to choose how to use it. As the council chamber buzzed with new possibilities, humanity's rise began to make sense. They weren't just a young species that had developed too quickly. They were catalysts, designed to shake the galaxy out of its comfortable patterns just when it needed to change most. Deep in the void between spiral arms of the Milky Way, a joint Human Federation research vessel hung motionless against the backdrop of distant stars. The Horizon Breaker was unlike any ship ever built, a hybrid of Federation stability and human innovation, crewed by members of 12 different species working in perfect harmony. Captain Sarah Chin, now promoted from her former diplomatic role, stood on the bridge alongside Science Director Zinare. Before them, a massive holographic display showed their target, a structure that, by all rights, shouldn't exist. The readings are confirmed. Zinare's patterns pulsed with excitement. The artifact is approximately 2.7 billion years old. It predates most of the stars in the sector. The structure they were studying resembled a massive geometric web, stretching across thousands of kilometers of space. Dark and dormant for eons, it had recently begun showing signs of activity, exactly as the fragments of progenitor code hidden in human DNA had predicted. Dr. Morrison's voice came through the internal comm system from the engineering deck. The quantum resonance patterns matched the signatures we found in the Prometheus code. This is definitely progenitor technology. But what is it? Elena Santos asked, her fingers dancing across the sensor controls. After 6 months of working together, the crew had learned to interpret each other's forms of communication, human gesture, crystalline patterns, chemical signatures, and even the complex quantum states of the hive mind members. The answer came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Vextor, a young Arxian engineer whose crystals still showed the deep blue of youth, suddenly emitted a pattern of recognition so strong it made the other crystalline beings on the bridge vibrate in sympathy. It's a quantum neural network, they transmitted, but on a scale we've never imagined possible. The geometric pattern, it's similar to human brain structure, but extended into 11 dimensions. Elena's eyes widened. That's why the Prometheus code contains quantum resonance patterns. We were designed to interface with this technology. The revelation sent ripples through the bridge crew. For months, they had been following coordinates encoded in ancient progenitor artifacts, trying to understand why humanity had been engineered for rapid advancement. Now, pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place. Captain, the ship's AI announced, its voice a careful blend of human inflection and Federation precision. I'm detecting energy fluctuations within the structure. They appear to be responding to our presence. Sarah straightened her uniform. All hands to stations. First contact protocols remain in effect. Dr. Santos, begin quantum resonance scanning. Let's see if... She was cut off by a sudden burst of energy from the ancient structure. A beam of coherent quantum information struck the ship, but instead of damaging it, the energy seemed to flow directly into the human crew members. Elena gasped as her mind filled with images, not visual information, but pure concepts downloaded directly into her consciousness. Around her, other human crew members were having similar experiences. It's a message, she breathed. The progenitors, they were running from something. Something that exists outside normal spacetime. They built these structures as a warning system and engineered humanity to be able to receive the warning when it came. Through the quantum link, the truth became clear. The progenitors hadn't just been advancing science, they had been preparing for war. A war against an enemy that consumed entire galaxies, that existed in dimensions beyond normal spacetime, that couldn't be fought with conventional weapons or strategy. The transcripts we found, Dr. Morrison's voice shook slightly, the ones that mentioned what comes after their return, they weren't talking about themselves. They were talking about them. Sarah turned to Zinare, whose patterns showed a complex mix of fear and determination. How long do we have? According to the quantum data, Elena answered instead, her mind still processing the downloaded information. The enemy's expansion wave will reach our galaxy in exactly 49 years, 8 months and 13 days. The progenitors are supposed to arrive 1 year before that to help us prepare. But why? Vextor's patterns showed confusion. Why engineer humanity for rapid advancement, only to wait until the last moment to return. It was the ship's AI that answered, its quantum processors having analyzed the data faster than any organic mind could. Because humanity needed time to evolve naturally within the parameters of the Prometheus code, the progenitors didn't just engineer a species for rapid technological advancement, they engineered one that could think in ways they couldn't. They needed humanity to develop its own unique solutions, uninfluenced by their own preconceptions. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity's seemingly reckless approach to innovation, their tendency to make intuitive leaps, their ability to find solutions that defied conventional logic, these weren't bugs in the system. They were exactly what the progenitors had been trying to create. The Federation's methodical approach preserves knowledge, Sarah said slowly. Humanity's chaos creates new knowledge. And together, Zenere finished, we might stand a chance against what's coming. As if in response to their realization, the ancient structure began to pulse with new energy. More quantum data flowed into the ship's computers, technical specifications, scientific theories, and concepts that would take years to fully understand. The Horizon Breakers mission had started as an archaeological expedition. Now it had become something far more important, the first step in preparing the galaxy for a war unlike any in history. A war that would require the combined strengths of all sapient species, fighting against an enemy that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional reality. And humanity, the youngest species in the Federation, would be at the forefront of that fight, exactly as the progenitors had planned. The Grand Chamber of Earth's United Nations had never hosted such a diverse assembly. Representatives from every Federation species stood alongside human leaders, their various forms creating a living tableau of galactic diversity. The chamber's ancient architecture, with its high-vaulted ceilings and historical murals, seemed fitting for a moment that would be remembered for millennia to come. High Counselor Vertox's crystalline form glowed softly as they addressed the assembly. 3 standard cycles ago, we discovered an ancient human relay station. Today, we stand united in the face of a threat none of us could have imagined. Captain Sarah Chin took the podium next, her uniform bearing the new insignia of the Joint Defense Initiative. The Horizon Breakers discovery has changed everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. But it has also shown us something remarkable. We were meant to face this together. The massive screens behind her displayed the combined fleet taking shape in Earth's orbit. Federation ships, their crystalline hulls gleaming in the sunlight, flew in formation alongside newer human vessels that seemed to defy conventional physics. Hybrid technologies, born from the marriage of Federation wisdom and human innovation, were already revolutionizing their understanding of space-time itself. Dr. Elena Santos stepped forward, her mind still occasionally flickering with echoes of the quantum download from the progenitor structure. The enemy we face exists in dimensions we're only beginning to understand. But the progenitors gave us advantages they themselves never had: Federation stability, human innovation, and, most importantly, our diversity of thought. The holographic displays shifted to show the network of research facilities spanning the galaxy. Each facility represented a unique collaboration between species, each approaching the same problems from radically different perspectives. We've already achieved breakthroughs that would have been impossible working separately, Dr. Morrison added, gesturing to the latest test results. The quantum shield technology developed by the human Arxian team. The hyperdimensional sensors created by the Ventralian human group. The temporal prediction algorithms from the HiveMind human collaboration. Zenere, now serving as Chief of Joint Scientific Operations, displayed patterns of pride and determination. What we originally saw as human recklessness, we now understand as necessary adaptation. Their ability to make intuitive leaps, to see connections where we see only chaos, these traits complement our methodical approach perfectly. The assembly watched as the displays showed simulations of their combined fleet engaging hypothetical extra-dimensional threats. Federation precision guided human intuition, while human creativity found ways to exploit weaknesses no one else would have considered. But perhaps most importantly, Sarah continued, we've learned something the progenitors themselves may not have anticipated. Yes, they engineered humanity for rapid advancement. Yes, they designed us to think differently. But they couldn't engineer the one thing that's proven most valuable: our ability to form genuine bonds of friendship and understanding across species. The chamber hummed with agreement. Over the past months, boundaries between species had begun to blur. Humans were learning to interpret crystalline patterns emotionally, while Federation species were beginning to appreciate human intuition as more than just reckless chance. "We have 48 years until the enemy reaches our galaxy," Elena announced. 48 years to prepare, to innovate, to build something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly unified defense force that draws strength from our differences rather than trying to eliminate them. Vextor, now a senior engineer on the Joint Fleet Project, transmitted patterns of optimism. The progenitors created humanity to think outside conventional boundaries. But humans have taught us that all species can learn to think differently, to see beyond our traditional limitations. The assembly erupted in a chorus of agreement expressed in 1,000 different ways: human voices, crystalline patterns, chemical signatures, and quantum states, all blending into a symphony of unified purpose. "The enemy believes they face a galaxy divided," Sarah declared. "Instead, they'll find one united by something stronger than fear: hope, innovation, and the determination to protect not just our own species, but all sapient life." As she spoke, new data streamed in from research outposts across the galaxy. Each breakthrough, each innovation, each small step forward was shared instantly across their unified network. The pace of advancement was unprecedented, yet tempered by the wisdom of ages. "We don't know if we'll succeed," Vertox acknowledged, their crystalline form resonating with deep emotion. "But we do know this: whatever comes through that dimensional breach in 48 years will not find easy prey. They'll find a galaxy that has embraced both the wisdom of the ages and the power of innovation. They'll find a civilization that has learned to turn its differences into strengths." The assembly rose as one, a gesture of unity that transcended species barriers. In the space above Earth, the combined fleet continued its exercises, each maneuver demonstrating the perfect blend of Federation precision and human creativity. The progenitors had engineered humanity to think differently, to advance quickly, to be ready for this moment. But they could never have engineered what had grown naturally from that seed: a true partnership between species, each contributing their unique strengths to a cause greater than themselves. As the assembly concluded, Sarah found herself looking out at the Earth below, its blue-white surface reflecting the light of its sun. Somewhere out there, beyond the dimensions they could perceive, an enemy was approaching. But for the first time in her life, she felt absolute certainty that they would be ready. The progenitors were coming back not to save them, but to join them in a fight they couldn't win alone. And when they arrived, they would find something they had never expected: a galaxy that had transcended their original design to become something greater than the sum of its parts. The age of division was over. The age of unity had begun. And whatever lurked beyond the dimensional veil would soon learn what humanity had always known: that the greatest innovations come not from following a predetermined path, but from daring to imagine something new. Together, they would face the impossible. Together, they would defy the inevitable. Together, they would write the next chapter in the story of life itself.